G'day folks and welcome to Australian UFO Sightings official podcast. I'm your host Anthony Goodall and you're listening to Encounters Down Under. Here we invite guests on the show to tell us about their encounters with aliens and UFOs, where most of our episodes were streamed live from our Facebook page, which gave listeners the opportunity to ask questions to our guests regarding their encounter. If you have had an encounter and would like to be a guest on the show, please get in touch with us. You can send us a message through our Facebook page, Encounters Down Under, or send us an email at australianUFOsightings@outlook.com.au. Be sure to join us on Facebook and share with your friends and family to help us grow, and hopefully encourage others to come forward with their encounter. If you're an iTunes listener and a fan of the show, why not give us that 5-star rating and review, and you could have your review featured on the podcast. But enough of that, let's get into what you've been waiting for. So kick back, relax with your favourite beverage, and enjoy the show. G'day folks and welcome back to another episode of Encounters Down Under. On this episode, Sasha joins us back on the show and is accompanied by her sister Justine as they both relive the strange experiences that their family has been enduring since they were young. So please welcome to the show, Sasha and Justine. Girls, welcome to the show. Sasha and Justine, welcome.
Hi, Anthony.
Thank you. Thanks, Anthony.
It's absolutely great having you on. I love doing these bit of a duo shows because, it makes it a lot more interesting because you're getting a whole heap of different perspectives coming through on this. And, obviously you've experienced things together. You've obviously, Sasha's probably, as you were mentioning before, had more of the UFO side of things there. And Justine, you got a bit more of a connection with maybe the paranormal side there or some sort of strange aspects there. But look, Justine, I want you to go and sort of open us up here and sort of tell us about your experiences, or even if you want to go and sort of open up and give us your point of view on the whole car trip there as you're going along with your family on that UFO.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Pleasure to be here. And I think just my experiences really tie back into a lot of the things that we experienced as a family. And I did listen to the podcast when my sister Sasha was on a couple of weeks ago, and there were quite a few stories that she'd missed, or I was sitting along just thinking, it'd be really great to be able to share my point of view and what went on, or maybe fill in some details and things like that she may have missed, or things that I remember. It just kind of comes back to we have a very strange family, and paranormal experiences and UFO experiences tended to kind of follow us around. And, whether that's got some other meaning to it, we'll never know. But we did always used to joke and say that we think our mother's an alien and that she's just calling the people to take her back to her home planet. But I think as kids growing up with that, we were kind of, I would like to say that I was at least desensitized to what would have been an otherwise scary experience, but I think Sasha will say otherwise and tell us how terrified she was a lot of the time. But being the younger sister, I think that I just kind of grew up a bit more adventurous, just maybe a little bit more ballsy. Really wasn't scared of anything, so I used to embrace a lot of the experiences that we had. So it was just funny, hearing Sasha's experiences and, what her perspective was, and then knowing that, I shared that same experience, but my perception of it, or my perspective, was just completely different. I think, a lot of those stories did come from our childhood doing that stretch of road between Adelaide and Whyalla in South Australia. And I think it's kind of got a reputation for being a bit of a hotspot for UFO activity. There is I believe there is a military base, or like a military training ground, or some type of army facilities or something out there. So sometimes we were a bit skeptical and we're thinking, is this some type of training that they're doing? Is this, a government conspiracy? Is this government work? Or is this really, something that is being controlled or coming from forces other than our own? But I think that kind of ties into, being the whole fact that it is a UFO. It is just an unidentified flying object, or an unidentified encounter that we've had, is that we just can't pinpoint what it is. So yeah, going back to a lot of Sasha's claims last time, our mother was always very skeptical, and she did raise us to be skeptics and to look at things from all angles. But a lot of the time it was also just really fun to make sure that we were kind of putting that little alien spin on things and having the what ifs as well.
Yeah, because she could also just be a witch or something.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty on point.
Yeah, because look, there's obviously something strange with your family going on here. Like, your mother's got some sort of perception there, whether be a psychic or some sort of magic, but also has a connection where she's able to. Well, I won't say able to, but has an interaction with some sort of alien presence, or I don't know what you'd want to call them. Like, what do you sort of feel like they are? Do you think they're aliens, or they could be something completely different?
Well, I love to think that what we've seen has come from somewhere else. I really would like to think that. That's my favorite theory. What's your theory, Justine?
Yeah, I've always felt that there is definitely two kind of categories to the experiences that we've had, and I would definitely align a lot of it with UFO activity and things that we can't explain from perhaps a world other than our own. But then there is also the paranormal side, which our mum's always kind of given us a bit of a scientific explanation and just that kind of supernatural belief that the paranormal and the supernatural is just that. It's extra natural. If we all tapped into the powers that human beings have and all that kind of stuff, maybe it is just a very natural state of being that we have grown out of. But our mother was part of a UFO research group. I believe it was called Euphora, which was operating in the early 90s in, I'm sure, Adelaide and other major cities around Australia. But I remember growing up and having her be quite involved with this group. I remember one incident where it was the 90s. There was a lot of the crop circles happening. There was a lot of is it real? Is it crop circles being made from these UFO craft, or is it just a bunch of teenagers flattening out some hay in a field with boards or something in the middle of the night? And there was one that was particularly interesting. Was my mother was actually sent samples of some, I think it was wheat or some type of crop
no, she
or whatever.
said she went on site. Yeah, she was there.
Yeah, she was invited to go out on site, but there was one that she was actually sent samples of, and I remember it coming in the mail, and it had this big letters stamped across it that said "Do not bend," and they had these different forms of this wheat that was encased in this plastic packaging, and it showed how the wheat had been bent, but it didn't break, and it still continued to grow. So it didn't, even though it was bent on such an angle, it didn't actually damage it to the point where it would die.
For lack of a
and
better
so I remember
word,
actually physically getting that in the mail, and it just spun me out as a kid to think that my mum was part of this amazing scientific UFO research group where she gets samples of crop circles. But yeah, there was this talk of there being, she did say that some were copycat ones and it was just a bunch of people playing pranks, but there were really interesting findings on some of the other ones where the wheat would bend and it wouldn't die, and it had high levels of electromagnetic frequency in the field. So yeah, it was just really interesting to see that kind of stuff growing up, and reading the articles in the magazines and things like that. So that was pretty cool.
Sorry, can
and
I
then
just interject there?
Sure.
Sorry, just on that note that you just mentioned, the whole the wheat and stuff. I just remember her telling us, yeah, I remember seeing the wheat in the mail, but I remember her saying that she was actually one of the first people called to one crop circle that was reported, and that the difference being having seen faked ones, you know, pushed down with boards or people stomping down the patterns or something with their feet, that the authentic one, in her terms, was actually, it seemed to be woven, that the wheat had been formed and bent in such a way that it was almost like not a snapped stalk, like if you bend a piece of wheat, a dried piece of wheat, and it will snap the stalk, but almost as if it had been fused into a bending position, and that the wheat stalks themselves in the ground were woven together in swirling patterns that were just intertwined and so intricate that it couldn't have just been done overnight by hand, or
yeah, so like a
that would
spiral
just
sort of
be
pattern.
impossible.
Yeah, but she said it was like done in layers. So if you were looking at it and if you tried to pull up the layers, it was like a very intricate woven, almost like different layers had gone down first, and then the second layer would fold down on top of that and be woven in, and then another layer fold down and overwoven into that one, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
okay,
just remember her describing.
That's a strange
that
concept.
It just wasn't just pushed, you know, wheat pushed down with the board like some people said it would have been done if it was faked. Yeah, she just remembered it being a very, very intricate, detailed thing that she's observed. Yeah.
No, that's very
and it's such a shame that we don't see, I guess, the level of activity. Like, I don't know what was going on in the 90s with humanity for this kind of stuff to be so, you know, so frequent. But I just remember it was, you know, there were a lot of instances, you know, that would happen throughout our childhood, not just with us personally, but, you know, in the news and in these different groups and in these circles. And, you know, it was quite common. And, you know, it might just be that, hey, if it is aliens, and we all know that, you know, however many thousands of light years it takes to reach us, they probably only hang around for a little while before they go back home. So, you know, maybe that's the reason. One of the stories, one of my specific encounters that I remember was on that stretch of road driving to Whyalla. And this one always stuck in my mind because it was as I had heard a similar story, I don't know, months or years later, from this research group that my mother was a part of. We were reading through some of the reports, and some people will say, oh, well, you were a kid, you know, maybe you read the report and you just thought that happened to you. And it was like, no, this actually happened to us first. And then I remember reading a report of somebody who had the same experience. And I just got so excited knowing that this is obviously a common occurrence, or, you know, it was just, again, that kind of affirming thing that, you know, okay, well, we weren't going crazy and it wasn't some, you know, shared delusion that we all had at the same time, that this specific experience other people had also experienced. And that was, we were driving down the road at night. My mum was driving, my sister was probably in the front seat. I would have been in the back, sitting in the middle of the back seat, as I always do, so I can get a nice view of everything that's happening. And it was nighttime, and you know, we were pretty much the only car on the road. We traveled a lot at night. My mum always preferred to drive at night because there was less traffic. And up ahead on the opposite side of the road, so to our slight right, there was red and blue flashing lights. So just your typical red and blue flashing lights. We're like, okay, a police car's pulled somebody over on the highway. I don't recall seeing headlights, but I just remember seeing the red and blue flashing lights. And we thought, okay, there's an incident up ahead. You know, maybe someone's had a car accident, maybe someone's just been pulled over. And so, you know, being that it was a highway at night, you know, my mum, and being that it was, you know, red and blue flashing lights, she'd slowed down to make sure that, you know, when she was there to pass, she would be going at a much slower speed. And so we were just chatting away, and this red and blue flashing lights was, you know, a few hundred meters in the distance. And we're chatting away, didn't think anything of it, just thought, okay, that's up ahead, you know, we'll keep an eye out. And then all of a sudden she turned to us and she said, where did those lights go? You know, we should have, did we pass anything? We didn't pass anything on the side of the road. And we thought, yeah, that's weird. we should have passed this by now. There was no car, there was like no other vehicle, there was no cones out, there was absolutely nothing. It was just as if it didn't happen. And she said, well, even if they'd turned their lights off, we would have seen a car, we would have driven past something. There should have been a police car, or if they drove off in the other direction, we'd see their tail lights. Like, we hadn't seen anything. It was just pitch black. And I turned my head pretty much right at the exact spot that we should have seen these lights. And the red and blue flashing lights had disappeared. But then I saw, across the road, kind of in behind the shrubbery or something that was across the road, I saw yellow and green flashing lights. And they were, pulsating, back and forth, these yellow and green lights, not spinning like, the red and blue flashing light police lights would, but they were pulsating green and yellow. Then they shot up into the sky like a slingshot, just as like so quickly up into the sky, still flashing green and yellow, and just shot across the sky and disappeared. And I just lost it. And I was like, what was that? There it was. I found it. It's gone. It's this, it's that. Like, what is it? Like, that was way too quick to be any kind of craft. There was no noise. There was nothing. And I just couldn't explain it. And so we were just, gobsmacked as usual. And yeah, we couldn't explain it. And then, months or years later, whatever it was, I remember reading this report. It was quite old because it was typed up in, horrible font that they have in the 90s, and, on an actual piece of paper instead of a screen, showing our age there. But I actually read somebody else's very, very similar account where they had seen red and blue flashing lights that then turned into yellow and green flashing lights and shot across the sky. Now, I don't know if it was actually, the same night that this person had seen it, or if it was on the same stretch of road. I don't think it was the actual same night or same road or same, particular experience. I just think that it was, replicated elsewhere, and it was, very similar to the thing that we had seen as well. And I think, Sasha, you were saying that you've actually come across different reports, even, further to that, where people have mentioned seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I have read somewhere that I'm pretty sure an encounter in Australia at least once did mention red and blue turning to green and yellow, something very similar. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would just be interesting to know, if anybody else has seen these, phantom lights, thinking it's, a police or a, some type of emergency vehicle, and then having it kind of switch on them halfway through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that was an odd one that I remember. I think another one, Sasha, that I remember that you didn't mention last time on this podcast, was the shadow, the shadow that followed us, which was really quite strange, because this was probably the only time, or the only experience I can think of, that we actually didn't talk about it as it was happening. We were all kind of observing it and didn't realize that anybody else around us had seen it, and for some reason didn't mention it until after the fact, when everyone then piped up and said that they saw it. But again, the same stretch of road, and we were actually traveling with friends of ours. We had our next door neighbors who had two daughters the same age as us. So a lot of the time we grew up and just acted as if we were all sisters. We were all very close growing up together. And so they were coming with us one time to Whyalla. I think we had probably even done the typical, okay, well, this is, the alien stretch of road or something of the sort. But yeah, there was this really very, very strange object, or I'm not sure, I really don't know what to call it other than a physical shadow, but like not a shadow, if you know what I mean. So it was like if a shadow had taken a physical form as almost like a structure and an actual physical thing, but it just looked like a shadow, and it was this stretched, like a very long, skewed, stretched, what I think was a triangle shape. So imagine if you had, a triangle and you grabbed one point and you stretched it really far out in front of you into quite a fine point. And it was alongside the car as we were driving. And I remember looking out of the window and just thinking, oh, that's a weird shadow. Like, what is that a shadow of? And I looked out and I thought, that is not a shadow. I looked up and there was nothing above us, and it wasn't sunny. I think it was, quite overcast, and it was quite near dusk. So, the sun was not high in the sky. There was nothing that should be casting a shadow. And then when I looked at it further, I realized that it wasn't on the ground. It was actually above the ground and traveling next to the car. But you could see through it, but it was quite dark. And it had very sharp lines. It had sharp edges. It looked like a physical object that you could just see through. Like if somebody had literally just photoshopped the real world and drawn this elongated triangle and just turned the brightness down on it. It was just the strangest, most eerie thing I'd ever seen. And it was, just traveling alongside the car. I looked above to see if there was anything above. There was nothing above. It was not attached, it was not on the road. It was above the road. And I thought, if this is a shadow of something, the shadow would go over other objects and you would see it distort. You would see it moving across things. And it wasn't like that at all. It was like you could just see through it. And it was, alongside the car. Never seen anything like it before in my life. Never, heard of anything like it before. Still to this day, I don't think anyone's ever had a similar experience. And we've never been able to find out what it was. Now, I didn't know at the time. I thought this was just, and I think it all, to me at least, it all happened relatively quickly. And my mind was just trying to tick over, again, being skeptical, trying to work out what this was. And then I kind of just not forgot about it, but just, turned my attention away. And I think it was you, Sasha, who piped up and just said, did anybody else see that? And then, I think Rebecca and I just, basically jumped into a fit just saying, oh my God, yes, I saw that. What was that? Why didn't we mention it? So yeah, that was a very strange one. Sasha, I don't know if you could add to that.
Still got you there, Sasha? Or not? I might have lost her. Sounds good name.
Or not.
So look, how big do you think this object was then, this strange thing?
It was larger than the car, for sure. And I remember it went into quite a sharp point, kind of towards the front of the car. Because I was sitting in the back seat, I guess my depth perception may have been off. So I'm not sure if it was actually ahead of the car or in line with the car, but it was quite a sharp point towards the front of the car. And then towards the back, like it kept going, like it was longer than the car. Like I was, up against the window of the car and turning my head, and I couldn't quite see the end of it.
Sorry,
but I could just see that it was
we can hear you now.
Quite sharp. Yes. Sasha, you're back.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, I'm like, I guess I'm here. Hello. Yeah, so actually the girl who was the girls who were in the car with us, Beck and Sarah, as Justine said, they were our neighbors first. We met them as young kids, and we're actually still really close today. Like, we've grown up with all this kind of stuff happening. They were witness to some of these things going on in our life, and it was actually Beck who reminded me of this whole like weird shadow craft thing. And that's what got Justine and I talking about it tonight before we came on. I was like, hey, let's all just get onto this talk. Like, we'll remember that, right? And Beck actually added something to that I didn't remember. Beck said having discussed our childhood UFO stuff that had gone on in our family and whatever. And this Whyalla trip, we were I think it was my 18th birthday we were going there for.
No, I think you were younger. We went there. I was about 14, I think. Or even
with
younger.
Beck and Sarah. No, Beck and Sarah was for my 18th birthday. And we stayed in the hotel, remember?
I swear to God, if I was 16
No.
in that photo, oh my God.
No. Yeah, so it was for my 18th. So yeah, and Beck actually just prompted me this today and said no, that the conversation in the car was actually on topic with your mum's an alien and all of this UFO talk and let's get your mum to call the aliens. And I didn't remember that part at all, but Beck said no, it was very prominent in her mind that, hey, we're all in the car together, let's give this a go. And she said that's what really terrified her the most, was the fact that it worked again, because when we spoke to when we joked and got my mum to talk to the UFO in that, the encounter I shared last show, and it responded and I got terrified. Well, Beck was in the position, Beck was put into that position this time, because apparently it worked again. So, I mean, I don't doubt her, that's the kind of stuff that happens, but Beck remembers that we actually asked my mum, hey Danny, oops, I just said her name. Anyway, hey Danny, call the aliens. And apparently she put another call out there, give us a sign if you're out there. And sometime after, this thing appeared next to the car. Now, my mum was driving and I was in the front seat. Justine was behind me and Beck was in the middle, and her sister was beside her. Me at the front of the car in the passenger seat, I could see, I don't remember how it appeared. I don't remember how it got there, but I do remember just having the presence feeling of something accompanying the car. And I did glance to the side, and yes, it was around dusk, like sunset, and it was not quite dark yet. So there was a bit of light, and I could see a very fine point at the start of the car. This is about a car's width away from the car to the side of the car above the road. So it was definitely hovering above the road. This was not a shadow cast on the ground, as Justine said. This was alongside the car, about a car's length away from the car. And yeah, it was a very, very long, fine point. From where I turned to look over my shoulder, I couldn't see the end of this object. It was very long. It was alongside the car. The back of it went to further than I could see from where I was sitting. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure if anybody else could see it. I thought if anybody else had seen it, they would say something. So for a few seconds at least, while I was staring at this, racking my mind for what this could be, I did think as well, this looks like a shadow, but it wasn't cast over anything. It was like a solid object because it kept a solid form. To me, it was a very, very fine pointed triangular shape. It looked very dense, black, smoky almost, but with very sharp edges. It wasn't cloud, it wasn't blurred edged, it wasn't like a foggy patch following us. This was like a very sharp edged triangular shape from what I could see. And it definitely was transparent, like you could see through it. But it was very, very dark, smoky, blackish shadow looking. And yeah, I just remember watching it. It was keeping pace with the car. It was just hovering, gliding, like it wasn't going up and down. It was very smoothly matching level with the car. And I just remember staring at it. I just remember thinking, there is no way this is happening. Like, is this real? Surely anybody's saying anything? Is anyone seeing this? Nobody spoke in the car. I'm pretty sure my mum was talking and nobody was listening to her. And she was just on her own little thing. Sounds about right. Mum was just talking and nobody was listening or responding because this was happening.
We were all staring at this thing.
We were just.
I actually remember my first thought when I noticed it, because I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I actually thought that they had put up a new fence or something. And I remember thinking, wow, that fence is really close to the road, like white, like, because that's all I saw at first, is just this darker mass out of the corner of my eye. And I thought, why would they put something like that there? And then I looked at it and I was like, that's a shadow. And then I was like, what is that a shadow of? That can't be a shadow. And I remember that was actually my thought process, that I originally saw it out of the corner of my eye, and it captured my attention because I thought, what a stupid place to build a fence so close to the road. Like, that was, like you said, it was about, a car's length away from us. Like, if you had 2 lanes of traffic and a car was next to you, and I thought, this is a highway, what's going on there? And then when I looked at it, I realized I could see through it, and it was, like, the only way that I can describe it is it was like a physical, it was a physical shadow. It's just the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah. So was this on the left-hand side of the car or the right-hand side?
Yeah, the left.
Yep, the left. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I got Beck in the comments here. She was saying she remembers it. One moment looked out the window and wasn't there, then the next time she looked out the window, it was there. So yeah, that's from Beck in the comments.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how it appeared. It was just suddenly just with us, and none of us said anything until it was gone. And the second it was gone, I don't know, I think it just vanished. I don't remember it like flying away or something, but I just remember saying, did anyone else see that? And straight away Justine and Beck just, what, you saw that too, that thing next to the car? And my mum's like, what are you talking about? And all of us over the top of each other are trying to like ramble on about this triangular thing. And mum got really frustrated and annoyed. She's like, why didn't you say anything? I could have just, we're like, oh, I don't know. You were driving. I don't know. We didn't think to say anything. And she got really upset because she's the one that called for it.
Missed out.
She didn't get to see
it.
I
think we just probably wouldn't have wanted to interrupt her. Like, she would have just been, telling a story or something like that, and we would have been pretending we were being interested.
I just tuned out. I just looked at this thing,
Yeah.
But the thing is too, though, like the moment you would mention it, it probably would have disappeared and no one would have seen it again.
Well, maybe,
and I think that we were all kind of just trying to fathom what it was before we said anything. Like, when you see a light, you know that you're seeing a ball of light or you're seeing something like that. I don't even remember, like, I don't even know what to, like, what are you going to say? Hey guys, do you see this shadow? Like, I don't know. I think I was trying to work out what it was before I would even be able to kind of verbalize what I was asking people. And yeah, I mean, I remember it being there for at least long enough for me to go through all of the things that I knew it was not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why I didn't say anything.
It's strange. I've never heard anything like that before.
It's definitely the first UFO or paranormal thing at all that we just didn't discuss until it was over.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Like,
do you think
is that?
Yeah. Sorry. Do you think it is a paranormal thing or maybe even a UFO thing? Like, what sort of
to me, it was an object. To me, it was an object.
It was definitely, an object, and it was definitely moving off the ground. Yeah. So to me, that's a UFO. That thing was flying next to me. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
No, that's fair too. So that's really strange. I've never heard anything like that. Even to try and comprehend what it even might be. I've got no idea. Like, the closest thing I could try and think of is like, a misty Min light, but there's not really a Min light at all.
Yeah, sorry to cut in there, but it just sparked memory of I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of the Phoenix lights in Arizona in America, the whole big Phoenix lights thing that happened over there years ago.
Yep.
Somebody interviewed who had seen it from the ground quite close as it flew overhead. They described a V-shaped craft that was transparent. They said that they could see the starlit sky through it and that it cast like a distorted view of the sky as it passed over, so that they could tell it was definitely a craft of some type, that they could see through it. And yeah, that they could see the night sky through it, that it became transparent.
Yeah. But even still, like, even if this was a solid object, how was it, like, you might have been going through past streetlights and all sorts of stuff, if you remember. Like, how was it not hitting any
there's no streetlights out there.
Yeah, no, it was more open road than it wasn't like a street.
Yeah, there's no streetlights out there.
Yeah. What about like a
guidepost
or something? Or even a guidepost or a guardrail, you going past anything like that?
No, it's more like open field and dry.
Yeah, it's just, you've got like a field with like a very, very thin little livestock fence, the thin wire fence on the side of the road. There's nothing for ages. It's just typical Aussie outback road.
Yeah, fair enough. So even like any bits
But
of
like I
trees
said,
or
there
scrub?
was some type of, either military base or something, some testing area or something like that out there. So, it is possible that this could have been some type of, stealth vehicle testing or something like that. I can't imagine why anyone would do that next to a vehicle, on a public road.
Yeah, see, that's where I'd think that it's not anything military. I mean, it could be, but for me, why would you test anything in public view?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just trying to work out what it is.
It was very strange.
Yeah, very, very strange indeed. Beck's saying it seemed as though it was close enough to the car to touch, so it was closer than anything. So I'm just trying to get a bit of a grasp of like if this thing was actually solid or if it was actually like a sort of a misty, wispy kind of transparent thing that could actually go through objects if it came to it, sort of thing, or would it crash into?
Yeah, like was it a transparent solid object or was it like a cloud in a shape or like, yeah, what was it made from? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get an idea.
It was in a very. The fact that it had such sharp edges, though, is like, if that was like some type of misty object, like we're doing what, like 110 k's down the highway. That's not mist, that's not fog.
Yeah.
Fog can't keep a straight edge.
No, that's right.
At 110 k's.
Yeah, and this is going on dusk too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was getting into the evening. Like there was still enough, kind of that dusky where it's like really like overcast and yeah, and everything's kind of that grey glow, I guess. And that's why I thought it was so strange, because I was thinking, okay, well this must be a shadow of something, but it just couldn't be. It's just, I cannot explain it. Weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work it in my head. Like I've seen, trying to think if I've ever heard anything like this or anything. Like usually, if it comes to strange shapes that are following the car, they've usually got a bit more of a larger shape to them or a bit more of a denser sort of look about them. But yeah, coming to like something that's very thin and sort of transparent at the same time just doesn't make sense to what the hell it could be.
I mean, yeah, the front point of it towards the head of the car was very narrow and quite sharp pointed, like almost like a sharp pointed spear of a triangle. But as I looked towards the back over my shoulder, it got wider. Like it was definitely a wider end to it, but the point was just so sharp and narrow. It was just, really weird.
That is strange. So hopefully someone can sort of give us a bit of insight, and hopefully someone else might have seen something very similar and sort of get a better idea on this, because that would be really interesting to find out. So what about these other experiences you girls have had? Because I know that we've got a long list, I'm pretty sure.
So
well, I think that's the thing, Sasha. You stole all the good stories on the previous episode.
I know, sorry. I stole all the ones you were in.
I know, because you've had so many. But yeah, in terms of, I'm just trying to think if there's been any other, UFO specific ones that I've been involved in.
Car?
Ghost car.
Oh jeez.
Ghost car was weird. The ghost car was like straight up ghost car. Like what?
It wasn't even a ghost car. Yeah, no. That's the thing. It wasn't even a ghost car. Like there was nothing to suggest that it was a ghost or a car. We just so I don't know. I'm pretty sure Beck and Sarah were both there for this. I remember Beck definitely being there for this. Beck doesn't remember this anymore. She used to remember it, unfortunately. Justine says she remembers it.
They were definitely there. They were definitely there. We were walking the streets like the little hoodlums that we were.
Bartley Terrace in Westlake, South Australia. If anyone in South Australia, they'd know Bartley Terrace. So
Bartley Terrace, good old West.
Cruising the streets at night. Just walking around.
We lived in the
roaming
area,
free.
okay, and this was like pre-internet days where when you wanted to have good old-fashioned fun, you just walked the streets at night.
Yeah, I know that's my bit of childhood memories there too, going out kicking cane toads and whatnot. So anyway.
Yeah, so we were just walking down the road and we were actually in the middle of the road. We weren't on the footpath because it was pretty late. There were no cars and traffic. We were just running around on the road being silly, just really stupid, just running amok, being
really dangerous to do as young, teenagers.
Don't run around on the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember one of us glancing behind us. I don't remember hearing anything. There was no sound of a car coming, but I just remember one of us turned over, saw behind us coming along the road towards us quite rapidly. 2 balls of light. We straight away assumed, okay, headlights, car coming. One of us yelled car, and we just scattered off the road. Kids play like ball games in the road and car, and everyone moves and gets off the road quickly. It's just one of those moments, oh, quick, car's coming. And we all scattered to get off the road, and just this car didn't come. There was just nothing. The lights came, but then they were just gone and there was no car. We didn't see a ghost car. It almost
came like
there were no headlight beams.
No, like we had our backs to it. So we turned and we looked and we're like, yep, car. And then turned away and it like kept getting closer. Like we were waiting for the sound of the car and this car to pass. And then there was nothing. But it had like
didn't turn away.
It's almost like, it was almost like it got like a few meters from us and just disappeared.
Yeah.
Was there like any street lights you couldn't see any cars like parked on the side there maybe or anything like that?
No, there were no cars. Even you can't park along that road where we were.
No,
I don't think you're allowed to park along there.
No.
Yeah.
And it was just really odd. Just definitely, moving at speed. Like it just, you would have thought. I mean, we didn't really pay too much attention to it at first. It's not like we looked and
we just thought it was a car.
There's some bright lights. We better stare directly into them and work out what it is. No, we just really just dismissed it and assumed that it was a car. And then, it just got close. There was no noise or anything like that. And then when it should have gone past us, it just disappeared. Super weird, and was just like one of those really odd things. So we just nicknamed that little experience Ghost Car, even though I don't think it was a car at all. There was no sound of an engine.
Because we just assumed that the 2 lights, because how low they were to the ground above the road, it just seemed car level, just seemed car height, and the fact that there were just 2 orbs side by side, it just seemed to be headlights coming. That's just what we just assumed at first. And
where we were, there was nowhere to like turn off. It wasn't like they could turn off down like a side street. It was a stretch of the street where there was nothing. Like you would drive and you would have to drive past us.
Yeah,
so that was interesting.
So it makes me wonder if like obviously you want to call it as a ghost car, but it could have been like spirit orbs or something like that was going down the street there, and they've probably spotted you girls there walking along, going, we can't be down here and get spotted, and obviously it's too late they've been spotted, but obviously it left you in wonder, and they're just going their own ways.
True. Like if there was, I mean, we didn't really because we didn't take much notice. Like honestly, like it could have been. I have no idea what it could have been.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, Sasha, didn't you mention that you had seen like a ball of light traveling down a road at some stage or something?
Oh, yeah. I mentioned that in the last call. You might have tuned out before then. But yeah, it just a huge ball of light did go past my bedroom window down the street. I did mention similar? That previous show, Yeah, it did actually. The one I saw down past my bedroom was like much bigger and just a single ball of light. But this, they just seemed like 2 round, goldenish, kind of whitish balls of light. Just
like quite round, almost like if you were to see like some old school kind of car that has those really circular headlights. So I just remember it like I would have just assumed it would have just been an old car. I mean, it was also I'm sure it was probably the 90s or early 2000s or something like that. So
it's
not unusual for people to have old cars. That definitely wasn't a car. Ghost car.
Yeah, no, that sounds like it suits it pretty well, to be honest. I think that's Yeah, or if you want to call it spirit orbs or something like even because I've heard stories there where people have been walking in the bush there and they have seen these orbs there and they sort of accidentally come across it and next minute they just disappear completely and they might be walking along again. They might see them in the distance pop back up. Sort of like if you spook a firefly or something, like you might see them and next minute they like, sort of spot you and like disappear, you know, because they might sense danger and then you might see him in the distance a little bit further on going, oh, okay, he's away from danger now sort of thing. So he's going to start sparking up again. But I know at one of those spirit orb things, it's just really hard to sort of get a grasp on what they actually are, whether they are a spirit or something on that nature.
Like
I don't know.
is that some type of conscious entity, or like what is that a manifestation of?
Yeah, and there's even when I had Bill Chalker on there, he mentioned a story there where these teenagers were out in the middle of nowhere and this orb-looking thing came down and sort of harassed these people. You know, and the blokes that were there were absolutely shitting themselves. You know, so like there's a lot of people seeing these things. Like whether you want to call them a min light, maybe I don't know, but usually to me, min lights are the ones you might see in a random location, sitting still doing nothing, or it's following your car. And I don't know. I think some do have like a bit of a intelligence about them. Maybe I don't know because it's sort of a bit hard to get a grasp on what exactly a min light is in general. Because you know people want to claim, yeah, there might be something in the distance, there's a bit of a light that's sort of following the car, but you're not getting close enough to sort of get a better idea of what it is, or something that's in behind the car, and you think it's like headlights or something like that, you know. But then other people are saying they're seeing these orb things there, which could possibly be a min light. So I don't know. It's sort of
I actually did. Sorry, I
you're
did
right.
experience another one of those orb min light, whatever it's going to be referred to as. Yeah, it was just a very, very short experience, but I just remember that one too. Driving with another friend, she was driving her car. We were going to visit her family in Gawler in South Australia. It's not Goolwa, but in Gawler. There's two similar sounding names there. And yeah, just driving along at night along a straight stretch of road. To the right of us was an empty lane of road alongside of us, and out to the right also was just open field and fenced off fields. There was no turn off. There were no roads to turn to the right. It was just a straight stretch of road, and it was quite dark. And as we were driving along, no traffic, we saw a ball of light out to the right in the field, and it was approaching the road, aiming just in front of us towards the same stretch of road that we were on. So it was coming horizontally across to the straight of the road that we were on. I can't explain better than that. It was almost like we were going to meet at a 90-degree angle. So it was out there, we were driving here, and as you're driving forward and it's coming across, it looked as though we were going to collide at some point. It kept the same pace. We kept the same pace driving. My friend said, "What is that, a motorbike out in the paddock?" And I said, "I don't see any other lights. There's no tail light. There was no beam of light from a headlight." We just kept an eye on it. She kept driving. She was getting a little bit nervous that we were going to hit. I said, "Don't worry, there's a fence." And we figured it would stop if it was a bike or something. As it got closer and as we kept driving, we could see it was quite a solid ball. It was definitely not a headlight or something bobbing around on a vehicle. And yeah, just at the point that we thought we would collide or it would, break through the fence, it just vanished. Yeah.
Wow, that is strange.
Yeah, just a few seconds it lasted, but that was definitely approached us pretty rapidly and just vanished.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if you heard the different theories there when it comes to min lights. You know, they're sort of saying it's like a bit of a gaseous light that's sort of being reflected from light surrounding from, you know, the horizon or the stars and stuff like that. And usually mostly the light reflecting on the gas sort of reflecting from the headlights of the car. And I guess maybe in your perspective on that event, it could have been reflecting from that gas if there was a bit of a gaseous. I don't know. I'm just trying to make something up here, but to make it sound good. But, you know, it's sort of like as if the lights are mirroring off the gassy substance or whatever, and sort of like getting
I mean, there was
mirror
nothing
effect.
for this light to. There was nothing that the lights from our headlights could reflect onto. Like there were no other source of light except the headlights. We were facing forward, and this thing was like to our far right off into a dark field. There was just nothing out there.
Yeah, this is
And
the
for
part
it
that
to
doesn't make
approach us from
sense.
the side, yeah, it approached us from the side where it looked like it would hit the side of our car.
Yeah,
By the time it got close and we were up to that point of the road, yeah, it just disappeared. It
yeah.
never once came in front of us or into our lights
And
or
it,
nothing.
I think we've kind of always had these very strange experiences with lights and balls of light. Like I remember my very first experience with a big ball of light was when I was about 2 or 3 years old. And
yeah, that one.
that was when that was, literally one of my first experiences ever. We were living in a townhouse at Westlakes, and my mother was running a bath for us, and I was just probably about 3, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I heard this loud bang, like so loud, like a giant balloon popping, like if you were to pop a balloon in a really echoey room, that kind of bang.
Yep.
And I looked up, and there was this great big ball of light in my mother's bedroom above, a couple of feet above her bed. It was huge. It looked like the sun, just this huge ball of glowing light. And then there was another bang, and it disappeared. And my mum was in the bathroom running the bath with, her checking the level of the water. So she had her head, quite close to the water and the echoey sounds in the bathroom. And I don't know if she heard the bang, but she didn't get startled by it or something. Maybe she thought, the cat had knocked something over or something. And I just turned to her and I said,
I remember hearing that.
Mummy, the sun just exploded in your bedroom. And she's like, what? And I said, the sun just exploded in your bedroom. And she went, okay. And she went to investigate, because it was obviously a very weird thing for me to say. And she went into her room and she put her hand on the bed, like, because I told her it was just above her bed. And she said the bed was really hot. And, she felt the heat coming off this bed. And Sasha, you were there, but you didn't see it. I know that you heard it.
No, I heard it. Yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah, but I was
standing. I didn't have a view of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was standing pretty much, in the doorway, like looking, and I just saw this giant ball of light. And I was, a little kid. And so that kind of stuff just became normal to us. So we grew up with it. It didn't ever really freak me out. I always loved all that stuff. But yeah, I think kind of going back to a lot of those kind of weird experiences. And I just wanted to just myself finish up a bit, because I've got to jump off soon. But going back to something that you had mentioned in the last podcast, Sasha, when you were talking about some of the experiences that Mum had and how she was contacted by the military police. And I just wanted to offer a bit of kind of credibility to that story. So yes, that is something that our mother had told us, and I think it actually stemmed from a psychic vision she had of a robbery at a Commonwealth Bank, I think it was, in the 90s. And she was in the bank one day, and she just had this horrible feeling that she just had to get out of there. She said her legs felt like jelly. Her feet felt like they were made of concrete. She couldn't move. She couldn't get out there quick enough. And then the next time she went into the bank, it happened again. And she ran out of the bank, and she started getting these floods of images in her head about the bank being held up. She said that she saw everything clear as day in her head after she got out of there, of what the people looked like, their names, where they were going, everything. She said it was almost as if she had just tapped into the minds of everyone that was involved, and she knew all of this. Now, she ran back home and ran to the neighbour's house, which was Rebecca and Sarah's mother, and told the neighbour everything that had happened, and that all this stuff that she saw in her head, and then of all this vision that she had. And then the radio was on, and it came over the breaking news of there's just been a hold up at the bank, and they just started freaking out. She said, you've got to call the police, and they started arguing. My mum was talking about which street it was and which suburb to try and get the address, because she said that she could tell the house, she knew the number, she knew everything about it. And they were arguing over which suburb this street was in, and they pulled out the street directory, and it just happened to be down the line of the dividing suburbs. But they ended up, calling the police, and Mum made a statement, and they just could not believe that she wasn't involved. They said, surely you've got to be the girlfriend. What, did someone do you wrong? Did this, did that? Couldn't understand how she knew so much. All turned out to be true. They ended up, actually being able to arrest these people, and they were just on her constantly. I'm pretty sure our phones got tapped. We used to hear the little clicking on the line of the phone when you'd get on a call, and they asked her. They had come over to her house multiple times and asked her, not the military police, but just I think the police in general, and they asked her how she could possibly know all of this, and she actually pulled out a flyer from one of the seminars that she was conducting back in the 90s, and it was called Mind Over Matter and the Metaphysical. And she was actually, she'd pulled together a panel of experts, and she used to host these events with different experts, scientific field or areas in spirituality, and they would have a panel discussion about these different kind of paranormal experiences. And these were proper public events. She used to run them down at the universities. She used to do them at the convention center. It was, book now at Bass and all ticketed events. And so she had handed someone this flyer, and she said, this is what I do. And it sparked the interest of obviously the police and the military police, who at that time were experimenting with obviously using psychics and things like that. So the story, Sasha, as you had mentioned on the last episode, that the military police had contacted her. They'd come in and interviewed her and asked her if she would help them with cases. And one of the things that they did was they actually handed her a photo of someone or something, and asked her and kind of prompted her to see what she would say, and she gave information about this. And that's when they realized that she was legit in whatever it was that she was doing, in the way that she was picking it up, because they obviously already knew the information and were testing her. And then asked if they could work with her. Now, they actually left, one of the military police investigators left his card with my mother and said, if you change your mind and you'll work with us, please give me a call. Now, she kept that business card, and she had always kept it on her. And she said, this is true. These people did contact me. And she said that she was so glad that the military police had actually left their business card so she could show that this was a legitimate thing that happened. And she'd always told that story, and I just knew that she'd always held on to that card. And I was actually with her the other day, and I was getting something out of her purse, and I thought, I'm going to check what's in here. And she'd already made a joke earlier that day saying her whole life's in that purse and all her memories are in that purse. And I thought, let me just see what's in there. And sure enough, she still held the business card from the military police investigator who came to see her all those years ago. So, Anthony, I have sent you a photo of that business card, and by all means, do what you will with that. If you, I'm happy for you to share that if you want with the listeners. Sasha, I'm not sure if that's something that you'd agree with, but I just feel like it's so many years ago. And obviously none of these things are, active investigations or things like that anymore. And it's common knowledge that a lot of these departments have used, psychics and dabbled in, the paranormal and things like that before. So, yeah, I just thought that was a little bit of interesting information, and, kind of a bit of a little token to know that she still has that after all these years.
Yeah, no, thank you. And look, as before we started the show here, we actually had a bit of a look into seeing if we can try and find this guy, and it turns out we may have him. The details are sort of there, so I'm not sure if I want to pursue it, because I'm not sure if I'm going to get any answers out of it. But as you mentioned when we were talking about this, we're either going to get a yep but a nope, or a no comment, sort of thing. But so I don't know. It sort of depends on how adventurous I feel, because it might start putting a target on my back And then they might start tracking you girls down, and next minute, we're getting the old men in black there knocking on our doors, going, "Hey, what do you know?" So I don't know. But then that'll become a good
Well,
thing then
hey,
too,
I
because
mean,
you'd be like, "What do you
I'm
guys know?"
happy to reach out to the guy just for a little bit of a laugh and a little stroll down memory lane.
Yeah.
Just, a bit of interesting memorabilia that we found along the way. But, I just thought that, at least that adds that little bit of credibility to the story. We know that this did happen, and I did just want to share that with you so you can see that, that these stories have got a little bit of weight to them.
They do. No, it's gonna be
Also,
good.
Beck did message me during this call and just let us know that her mum actually has some of the same crop circle wheat.
Oh wow, okay.
Yes.
Still has it. I
Yeah.
think she mentioned that in the comments there. I think,
She's got some of it.
yeah, she
All
said.
the little
She
I
says
love
in the comments
that.
that she still has a piece of
tokens.
grass in the folder. So yeah, that'd be cool if she can send us through some photos there, and then I'll definitely
Yeah.
throw that in the show notes there and share it to the people if you're happy to try and get that through there, Beck. If you're listening now still, so that'd be cool because it'd be really good to actually see a bit of evidence, of a crop circle, like a proper one. It's not something you get
Yeah.
to see every day.
Yeah.
No, of course not. Yeah, it's super interesting, and yeah, loved growing up. Being exposed to these kind of interesting subject matters, to say the least. And yeah, it's been an interesting life. We've definitely been called witches and aliens and our own versions of any of them. But no, it's definitely been interesting. It's been good to grow up with, having an open mind and keeping an interesting perspective on things and looking at things from all angles. And it's been good.
Yeah, no, look, it's definitely something going on between your family there, where you're getting both best of both, or best of all three worlds, really. Like this world, the UFO world, and the paranormal world. There's something going on there, which I think a lot of people will be very jealous
Yeah.
of, because they want to, people go for their whole lives not seeing anything of interest, or anything interesting in that matter. They just they might have an interest in it,
Yeah,
or
we'll
they
just
might not
come and
even,
spend a
or they
few
don't
days
want it
with
at
us.
all.
We'll make
Yeah,
some
well,
magic happen.
there you go. You can start doing a little bit of expeditions there, and hopefully be able to show people what they really want to see. There might be something that you can sort of use a bit of your mum's wisdom and a bit of power or something, and start calling in these aliens like your mum did. And go, "Is
You
he
might
really
regret saying
there?"
that, Justine.
No, yeah, I'll probably regret that one. But
Yeah.
but look, it's been an absolute pleasure, Anthony. Thank you for having me on. I'll leave you with Sasha to kind of continue the conversation, and add anything in that I've missed or anything like that. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak with you and to share some of my stories with your listeners.
Yeah, no, I believe the pleasure is all ours. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing with us. Because any sort of getting another perspective on things, like of experiences together. It's always interesting to see two sides of the story. Over the same event, because everyone sees it differently and everyone remembers it differently, and that's the best part about when you have a sort of mass sighting or experience in that sort of nature. You can sort of go back and go, "Oh yeah, I remember this now," and you're like, as you were mentioning before, like people remember things differently, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that now," and you're like, you sort of jolts memories, and that's the best part about it, really. So it's really good that you came on and gave another perspective to the whole encounters, really. So thank you.
Well, yeah, no, thank you for having me, and thanks again for to all the listeners listening to me. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'll maybe catch you next time if I have any new and interesting encounters.
Absolutely, let me know. I'm sure we'll be all sitting here waiting. Looking forward to it. Cheers.
All right. Thanks, Sasha. Thanks, Anthony. See ya.
See ya. Till next time. Oh, that was great, Sash. Yeah, look, thank you very much for getting your sister on, and yeah, talking both sides of the story. That's absolutely awesome, because that it's really interesting getting both sides of the stories there. So now, you also mentioned before we started here, I need to remind you on a little encounter yourself that you had, these 2 objects?
Oh yeah. So I kind of hoped that you might forget about it because I'm really hesitant to share this. I kind of mentioned it in passing, just briefly in another podcast a couple of years back, and I kind of really regretted it as I said it because I was just thought, oh, it's out there now. It's not something I've really discussed publicly, but you know what? I'm not putting it down as fact. It's something that I just think is worth sharing for the experience that it was for me, which it's just left me wondering really what happened. So I had two really strange experiences when I was very young as a kid that could potentially have involved ETs, so extraterrestrials. I'm not sure that it was a real thing. I mean, the experience for me was real, but I'm saying I can't say that it really involved a physical being. It could have been my imagination. It could have been a hallucination. But the experience and the emotion for me and the memory of it was very, very real. It was very distressing at the time, one of them. One of them was quite interesting and later became distressing once it really hit me. But yeah, it's never been put down in my mind as something that really physically happened. It's just something that, yeah, it's an experience that I've had that I start rambling when I talk about it because I'm hesitant to even say it because it just sounds so absurd, but I'll share it for a bit of fun anyway. I'm not sure of the order of this, but one occasion it was at night time, living with my mum and my sister in the same house as, the sun just exploded and all the weird stuff I used to talk about that happened in our home. So one night, this is when I was very young and I was sharing a room with Justine. We had our own beds and I couldn't sleep. I had a very, very uneasy feeling. I was just scared and I don't know why. I didn't have a reason. I just felt very, very scared, very, very uneasy, unable to sleep. And my mum was downstairs. She had the lights on. She was still awake. She was doing something downstairs. And I just remember calling out to her. I don't know how Justine didn't wake up to this. Maybe she did. She didn't respond to me calling out to my mum. Seemingly she was asleep in her own bed in the room with me. And I just called out to my mum. My voice was shaky. I said, Mum, I can't sleep. Can I please sleep in your bed? And she didn't really want that because, I didn't really have a reason. I couldn't really tell her why. She figured maybe a bad dream. So she said, oh, all right, go in my room. Her room was just a couple of meters from our room. So she put the hallway light on, or the landing light. It's just a little light outside my room and her room. There was just a light on there. So she left that light on. She turned the light off in her room for me to sleep and I asked her, please leave the door open and the light went outside the room. So she went back downstairs. She left the door ajar so that, I could call out if I needed. And I was laying in the middle of her double or queen size bed, closer to one side of it actually. And there was a window beside me in the side of the bed that I was in. And I just remember clutching this blanket to my chest and still feeling so terrified and just waiting. It's like I knew something was coming and I was so terrified of it and I couldn't explain the feeling. And as I was sitting there, now this is what makes me think it's probably just my imagination. Sometimes kids get spooked in the dark and they start, thinking about monsters under the bed or something. I just felt like something was happening and I knew it was coming and I just had to just brace myself for it. And then my mind probably created this scenario. Do I really think this physically happened in my mum's house? No. But visually, what I saw probably just projected through emotion and fear. My mind could have just created this view for me sitting in that bed with the light on outside the room and the door ajar. I saw a figure approach the doorway. It was silhouetted by the light behind it. And it just seemed like a small figure. And I became paralyzed with fear. I was so scared. I actually couldn't look away. I was too scared. And I say in my mind, but it's like I could see this with my eyes. It's like this was happening in front of me, but I'm sure it was just created visually by imagination. It just seemed very, very real at the time. It seemed that this being came around the bed and approached my side of the bed. and that it placed its hand on my wrist. And the feeling, I remember feeling it had a cool touch to it on my skin. And I, at that point, managed to somehow scream for my mum. And it was gone in an instant. I just remember closing my eyes as soon as it touched me. I screamed and screamed. And again, I'm not sure if Justine remembers this or if she woke up to this. I'll have to ask her because this is something I haven't discussed with her. And my mum quickly came into the room, and I still had my eyes shut at this point. But by the time I heard her footsteps coming up and entering the room, and asking what was wrong, I opened my eyes and saw the shock on her face as she entered the room. The window beside her bed, the side of the bed that I was on, she had floor to ceiling windows with very heavy, thick drapes. It was like very heavy velvet drapes, very thick. These drapes could not easily blow in a breeze, and the window was shut. Now, when she entered the room to see what I was screaming about and what's wrong, and I opened my eyes and saw her face first before I even looked up, I met her gaze looking at the curtains, which should have been hanging by the bed beside me. They were actually outstretched at a 90-degree angle above the bed over my head. And she looked shocked at that, because to even lift them, to shake the dust off them, or to pull them open, they were quite heavy. These curtains, I just remember I looked up, they were like a roof covering my head. They were just level with the ceiling, just outstretched. By the time she noticed and ran in the room to check the window, they instantly dropped back flat against the window. I was absolutely terrified. She checked the window to see what's going on with this wind blowing in. There was no wind. The windows were completely shut, and she just looked at me and asked me what was wrong, what had happened. And I kind of just remember sobbing and telling her that there was something in the room, something touched me, something came in. I don't remember much after that. I just remember that she just calmed me down, and there was no way I could sleep, and I was just very upset. And yeah, I just remember this horrible feeling of thinking an alien came. I didn't use the word alien at the time in my mind as a kid, but years later, remembering it so vividly, I just remember thinking, oh, an alien came into the room, and it was really, really scary. So yeah, that I can't say that actually happened, what I saw, but the curtain thing did happen because my mum walked in and saw that. So that was just a weird occurrence. I can't really add to that, so I guess I'll just move on to the next thing, which I'm not sure happened before or after that. But again, not sure if my mind just created this. Most likely did. I mean, again, trying to think rationally and skeptically and scientifically and just, I don't know, psychologically, probably just imagined this. But again, it seemed very, very real at the time. I remember I was about 5 years old, and I got kept after school because I either did something wrong, or I didn't do my work properly, or I just hadn't been behaving correctly that day. It's not like I was a bad kid. I had barely any friends. I was very much a quiet, secluded kid and just wanted to be teacher's pet and just not get into any trouble. But I was kept behind for a few minutes after school. I'm not sure why. And our house was across the road from the school. It was just a few meters from the school entrance. So mum would let us just walk down the street. It was the early 90s. There was no real trouble back then with letting your kids cross the road to school by themselves. Yeah, and I just remember coming out of the school, I remember the feeling of my school bag on my back thumping, because I was stomping. I was quite grumpy. I was in a bad mood, didn't want to be held back, getting annoyed going home. And I just remember looking down at my feet and stomping the ground, and my school bag just banging into my back as I was stomping. And I remember being annoyed about the teacher or something. And I glanced up to cross the road. There were no cars coming. I looked back down at my feet after I had crossed the road, and I could show on a map exactly where this happened. So I had just crossed the road. I had my face down, looking at my feet, stomping the concrete path. And in the midst of all this, I'm grumpy, school's annoying, this teacher's annoying, whatever. I felt an electrical jolt into the top of my head. Something it's like an electric shock into the top of my head. I instantly stopped looking at my feet. My head turned up and to the left. It was almost like it was directed by an electrical current to just turn up and left. And in my mind's eye, at least, I could see a small alien being standing. This is in the daylight. This is afternoon. This is bright sunny day, no traffic around, no people around, no neighbors outside their gates. This was just a secluded, weird, it was almost felt like a ghost town. Nobody was on the street at the time that this happened. And I can't say that this was something that was physically there, but I felt this physical sensation in my mind, an electrical shock in the top of my head. I turned, I looked, and I could see what I thought was an alien being standing in these bushes outside somebody's house. This sounds absolutely bizarre, but this is just what I'm relaying, what I can remember experiencing. I then felt a strange sensation. I was being pulled towards it as though I was floating. I must have been walking, but I didn't feel my feet on the ground anymore. I remember thinking I can't feel my feet on the ground. I remember the feeling of not feeling my feet on the ground. And I was moving towards this being, almost felt as if I was floating, but I was still ground level. I just remember thinking, well, I can't feel my feet on the ground. I couldn't feel myself taking steps. I just felt pulled towards it. I can't explain it any better than that. And suddenly I was face to face with this being. Now, I was 5 years old. It was a little bit taller than me, but not a lot taller than me. It definitely wasn't, adult sized. And I remember having this conflicting feeling of absolute terror looking into these eyes. It's a typical grey alien figure, but it wasn't grey. It was more of like a tannish kind of a beigey color, I'm not sure how, like a tannish beigey color. It wasn't grey. But the typical big black eyes. And I just remember staring into this black void of eyes and feeling absolute terror because I was about a foot in front of it at this point. I was standing staring at it. It was standing staring at me. Now, again, this is all probably just my wild, crazy child imagination. But at the time, this felt very, very real. Staring into these eyes, absolutely terrified, but also amazed, in awe, excited, wondering what to expect. Just no thoughts came into my mind of words, no words at all. I wasn't thinking, what is this? I'm scared. I just had all these emotions that I remember so vividly. The emotion was so real. The visuals in my mind were so real. But no words. I just stopped thinking about being grumpy at school and stopped thinking about the teacher. All of this that was happening now was visual and emotional. There was no train of thought in my mind. Staring into this face and the face staring back at me. And again, this weird occurrence of it reached out and touched my wrist. When it touched my wrist, again, I felt, now I don't know if this happened before or after the whole bedroom incident, but the feeling of this coolness of its skin touching my skin. And I remember internally flinching, but I didn't pull my hand away like I wanted to. Internally, I felt the want to do that, but I didn't. My physically remained calm. Internally, I was absolutely terrified. I didn't want this to be happening. And I just remember it touched my wrist and suddenly an exchange happened. In my mind, I was given a lot of images too quickly to remember. And I felt like something was being taken from my thoughts and that something was being given to my mind. And I can't explain what, because it happened too quickly. It was like an explosion of information transferred, either taken and given at the same time or shared or exchanged. I can't really explain it. As a kid, it was too much for my small mind to comprehend, but that's just what it felt like. And I was given at the end of whatever was being happening, I was given a view of a scene in my mind. I could see it was an otherworldly view. It was a very interesting view. I could see a horizon I was unfamiliar with. It seemed like a different planet. It seemed like peaks and crevices, almost like pillars, kind of like termite mounds and the Grand Canyon. Like as a kid, that's just termite mounds and the Grand Canyon is the closest thing I could relate it to, but different colors, this weird landscape. And I could see in the background in the sky other planets or a moon, like very, very close to this planet that I was seeing this vision from. And I could see an illuminated craft making its way, floating through these crevices on this planet. And that's just the weirdest. I don't know how that came to me. I don't know what that's about. I hadn't seen it in a movie or read it in a book. It just came to me. I felt a very pleasant sensation seeing this, and I felt grateful to have been shown this. And all in this moment that I saw this vision and felt somewhat kind of satisfied and grateful, it was over. I came to my senses. I found myself standing in the garden in somebody's front yard space, outside their gate, in their shrubbery, in their bushes, in their garden. And I suddenly felt very, very embarrassed and awkward that I'm standing in somebody's property. What am I doing here? I quickly looked around and felt flushed in my face, embarrassed. Why am I standing here? Has anybody seen me standing here? What am I doing here? This is embarrassing. And I quickly hurried home. All of this left my mind suddenly, and I'm rushing home, feeling hot, flushed and prickly and really scared, and my hair standing up on the back of my neck, and I was really antsy and my hands are shaking. And then suddenly the visions kind of came back in my mind. I saw the face, I saw the eyes, and I got really, really terrified. And I just made it to my gate, which was only a few steps away. And I pushed through the gate, and my mum's kind of expecting me because I'm not usually late. And I opened my mouth and I looked at her face and I went to say, "Mum, I just saw this." And something stopped me, and something said in the back of my mind, "Now is not the time." And instantly I just stopped. I couldn't form the words. I couldn't tell her. I wanted to tell her. And I just said, "Don't worry about it, nothing." And I got flustered and frustrated, and I left it at that. Sometime later, either the same day or a couple of days later, I told my friend Beck, the same one from all these stories. I told Beck, "I saw an alien, come and help me find it." And it was our child mission to go look through the bushes and find this alien. And yeah, that was just, I mean, yeah, it's probably a daydream. It was probably just imagination. It's just not something I would typically ever think of or like to think about. It's not something that I was really aware of, aliens. I didn't even use the word alien in the time it was happening. I didn't think that's what this was till I wondered and questioned, and I don't know, the word alien came up when I said to Beck, I said, "Beck, I saw an alien, help me find it."
Obviously
and
didn't know success.
I had to prove to her. Sorry?
Obviously didn't know success.
Oh yeah, no success. Yeah, she remembers me telling her this, and she remembers that I was very, very determined to show her and that this was real, and that, "Please come and help me find it. You're my best friend. Come and help me find this alien." And yeah, just that didn't happen, obviously. But I actually didn't tell my mum about that until my mid-20s. And we were sitting together having a conversation about her experiences from childhood. And she was relaying to me an abduction case that she thinks happened. And it just came into my mind, and I went, "You know what? Probably not, but did I possibly see an alien? Let me tell you this." And yeah, that's when she said, "Hey, I remember that the curtains in the room happening, and you said something happened there." But yeah, I definitely can't say that happened. It was just, I remember the feeling of this happened. I remember in my mind now explaining it. I can see it in my mind as though it was real. But from an outsider's perspective, I've tried to kind of zoom out and think, if anybody else was on the street and somebody happened to be there when this odd child's crossing the road, what would have happened? What would they have seen? Would they have seen a kid in a daydream stumbling around going up to someone's front gate? Probably. Would they have seen an alien in the bushes? Probably not. Was there one and they couldn't see it? Maybe. Was I just imagining it? Probably. So it's just something that's just always stuck in my mind as a very significant memory of a vision that I had.
Yeah, I was sort of going to ask, do you sort of recall any sort of missing time, if you took note of the time when that sort of experience happened with seeing the alien in the garden at all? If it could have been maybe 5 minutes worth, or if it was maybe an instant sort of.
I don't know. All I know is that my mum was wondering where I was, because our school was, like I said, it was probably, if I check on a map, no more than, I have to check on a map to be sure, but honestly, it was about 10 houses down the street. It was not far. It would have taken a couple of minutes to walk to and from school. She didn't even meet us at the school to walk us home. It was very close. Even being 5 years old, she had no trouble with me coming home. And I just remember as I came through the gate, she was at the door, just almost coming out looking for me, expecting "Where are you?" And she seemed a bit annoyed or worried or concerned that I had taken the amount of time that I had. And I just remember the look on her face about to question me, and then she must have seen the look on my face. And then as I tried to tell her my explanation for being late or what just happened. Something just said just not a good time to tell her, just now's not the time, and I just left it at that. So I can't remember even the conversation that followed that, if she said how long I'd been or asked where I'd been for so long. I don't remember. That was it.
Yeah, I was certainly going to suggest that like maybe she already had an idea something happened when she sort of looked at your face and like sort of might have had a realization, or something might have given an indication
I don't
that something
know.
happened maybe, but didn't question, because like she already might have some sort of like, your mother's got some sort of abilities there. She might have been able to tap into something.
I
Maybe.
wish I'd asked her. I wish I'd asked her even later, years later, because yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you sort of wish you had
I'll never
questions
know.
and answers for. It's frustrating, but yeah. I got Jane just popped
Yeah.
in the comments there now. Like, would you try hypnosis to try and figure it out? Maybe, I don't know if you want to try and dive into that sort of.
Now, with all the paranormal stuff I've discussed and going on about how blessed and excited I am to have this in my life, honestly, I feel like a bit of a coward saying this. I don't think I could face that if it was real. Aliens is the one thing that really in the back of my mind has just really, really thrown me since all the UFO experiences, the one that responded to my mum talking and all of that stuff. Since then, I was so terrified at that time that honestly, I just don't think I would want to face that being real if it was. I like to keep it, in my mind, I imagined it. In my mind, is there a 1 in a billion% chance that it could have happened? Maybe. But do I want to go into that and think of it as a reality? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
It would be sort of scary, like, and especially if like the hypnosis doesn't really do the job properly, where they're sort of leading you into something that that didn't happen.
I wouldn't want it to be anything worse, because I mean, as I hear what I just described, it sounds like a pleasant enough experience. Oh, a kid went for a walk, saw a little being in a bush and got a pretty picture in my head. I was terrified seeing that face in front of me. I was terrified feeling something touch my wrist, even if I created it in my mind and I imagined the feeling. That was absolutely terrifying. Me now trying to visualize that face again in my mind and the depth of those black void eyes absolutely terrified me. Yeah, now I think it's kind of cool if that was real, yay. But no, some deep-seated part of me will always find that too much for my mere little human mind to comprehend. I just can't. I can't deal with that.
Yeah, look, honestly,
No.
I think these were actual probably genuine experiences there. Like Bex in the comments, they're saying that she remembers you telling her about it, and that I think she's saying she closed her eyes and touched you, and she was actually even able to sort of connect and relive your experience a little bit of what you saw in those visions. And
I remember her being scared from what I told her.
Yeah, so unless like that's
Yeah.
probably scared after that moment, I'm not sure. That's probably something you guys can discuss afterwards. But yeah, she's saying where
Yeah, I'm
school
gonna
was
ask
like
her again
definitely a
about it.
2 minute walk tops, and that your mum was against it because it was very easy to be given false information, and she thought couldn't be trusted. I think they might be referring to the hypnosis. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, with hypnosis, yeah, she is. That's all right, yeah. But yeah, look, I think that's very, very scary either way. Like especially for a young child, and like even though like you're saying, we imagine things as a kid, and we can, our mind can create things. But I think just some things there are just too realistic, and especially if your mother's like come in, especially when these curtains are up in the air, and it sort of throws in a lot more credibility to the whole experience that something has happened. So
I mean, the UFO and potential abduction experiences that she shared with me absolutely terrified me. She told me stuff that she remembers as a kid. And it really, really creeped me out. She didn't mention any, beings, but the craft that she described to me and the feelings and emotions that came with it and what actually happened with her and the craft, that scared me. Her emotions scared me. Her retelling me scared me. She actually regressed into a child And when she was telling me, it's like she became that child. Her voice and emotion and the look on her face, it was a very, very unpleasant and uncomfortable experience for me as a 20-something-year-old to see my adult mother in front of me, who I've known all my life as a parent, regress into a small child in front of me. And her voice retelling it and the emotions that came with it absolutely terrified me. She was like in a trance, as she told me. She was reliving the experience. And when she came out of it, in the same sentence, the same conversation, she had no idea she'd just told me, which scared me more.
Yeah,
Because
that
I'm
would
like,
have been creepy.
what? I mean, I could save that for another time, but yeah, I was like, what? And she's like, what? I said, you just said, no, I didn't. What? I'm like, okay, that's scary. Yep, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, news to me. Yeah, her childhood stuff, UFO stuff, really creeped me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still think there's something weird going on with your family. Whatever it is, it's it's. I don't know. If it's one thing to be jealous of, or
Yeah.
sort of be hesitant of wanting. To be honest, like obviously, you obviously haven't had any real bad encounters, to say as such, that you're aware of.
Yeah,
But
I mean, real safe and well, and nothing really came between us or happened. We had a great life for the most part. Yeah, I don't see any negativity that came out of these side of things at all. This side of our life was, I still consider a blessing. I'm sure my mum and Justine do as well. But yeah, the whole alien thing, if that side of anything of this is real, yeah, everybody else can keep that. I don't need that.
yeah, because it sort of makes you wonder,
No.
like, especially like when you're saying like that alien or creature was in your room there, and before your mum came in, and I'm trying to like figure out like what happens there, like because there's theories there like they're an interdimensional being, and it's like, well, how can they sort of like just disappear in an instant, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's done to sort of get away has made like a bit of a distortion in the room to make those curtains fly up into the air like they did. And like were they sort of like floating there or sitting there like stiff and as if it was like leaning on something, or is it sort of like as if it's gone flown up, if you
I
remember it
just
all?
Yeah, when I opened my eyes and looked up, it just looked like they were level with the ceiling above me. They were just flat out. They weren't waving in a breeze. They were just, oh, it's giving me the heebies because I'm actually sitting on my bed
Yeah.
now beside a window with curtains. And I'm reliving this. I'm kind of half expecting these curtains to just do it again now. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Yeah, I'm looking up at my own ceiling, reimagining it, and I'm like, oh, this is too much. Yeah, they were just stuck straight up, almost not touching the ceiling, not flat against the ceiling, but horizontal with the ceiling.
Yeah.
At ceiling height. They were just up and flat and outstretched above my head. It was just weird.
Yeah, it's strange. I'm trying to work out
Yeah.
like what can be creating something like obviously that whatever he's done to get away has created that effect for that sort of motion to happen, and it's like, well, what is that
No, please
itself?
tell me this was my imagination. There wasn't actually something
Yeah,
in my
but the fact that your mother saw it as well, and it's like going, well, okay, this is a bit weird, but what if I just walked into kind of thing? It's
Yeah.
like, and obviously she's
Yeah.
trying to work out the logic behind it as well. You're saying the window's not open and nothing
Yeah.
can create that.
Yeah.
You're not going to be climbing out of bed there throwing the curtains up to the roof. Not that I think by the sounds like
Yeah.
you wouldn't be even be able to half attempt that going by the weight of them. But
Yeah.
it's
No.
I'm trying to work it out. What can create something
Yeah.
like that? And I don't know, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping someone there can have a bit of an answer to it and a bit of a theory maybe to try and work it out. Because there's just that whole aspect of these things that can just disappear in an instant, without in the blink of an eye, and they've
Well,
gone.
that's why
It's like
I
why,
also
how?
lean towards, imagination can do wondrous things. The curtains, that happened, there was, my mum saw it, I saw it, the curtains happened, that was a physical thing. Little being in the room, did I just imagine that and I got scared enough that the curtains moved from my anxiety? I don't know. I'm trying to wonder too here as well now.
Yeah,
Yeah, just really not sure about any of that sort of stuff, but just thought I'd share it anyway. Just another, drop in the bucket of weird stuff from my side of life. So
Yeah, no, thank you. And look, before we end the show up here, like, if anyone's listening here, got some questions here quickly before we finish it up, quickly throw them in the comments there so we can get it in. Otherwise, but I think we'll be looking towards the end of the show there. Because yeah, look, it's absolutely been great having you on here tonight. Just reliving through your experiences there, and like it's absolutely mind-boggling even to try and think or even fathom what your family has gone through, even trying to understand them. You know, like there's just too much there. There's too many questions and not enough answers.
yeah,
And I'm hoping that someday we will get some sort of idea, and or at least in my lifetime, I hope I go like, hey, I remember that conversation, and they had this weird thing happen there, and like someone's gonna be like, oh yeah, no, this is how it works. It's like, okay, that's a really weird concept, but okay, yeah, that's how it works. You know, that's what I want someday, is like
yeah,
be able to have an explanation
yeah,
to all this weird shit that keeps going around this world. Because and
yeah. I would
that's
love
the
to know.
frustrating
I'd
part.
love
Yeah,
to know.
for me, that's frustrating. And then the other part is obviously we want the truth to be out there. You know, the people are having these experiences. They're
Yeah.
much like yourself. And your family, and just everyone in general seems to be having some sort of weird experience, and it's all worldwide. You know, people are having this similar experiences, and it's not just some
Hmm.
big, prank on the world. You know, they're not getting together having a big prank and joke on the world, going, "Ha, well, you guys believed us because you're all dumbasses or something like." You know, there's too many
Yeah.
people that just don't know each other from a bar of soap. You know, and they're having similar experiences there. So it's not just a coincidence. You know, it's a genuine fact that something is weird happening out there. Too much paranormal stuff, too much cryptid sort of stuff, UFOs, whatever you want to sort of call it. There's something out there we just do not understand, and there's big ass cover up, and it just makes you wonder why we have that sort of cover up, why there needs to be that control
Hmm.
of what people are experiencing, why it has to be. You know, why can't we live alongside it? You know, to try and maybe it could be beneficial to the world or like humans in general or something like, I don't know. But I sort of feel like we need to
Yeah.
have that I don't know how you'd call it, you know, but we need to have that. I'm trying to think how I'm going to call this now. Disclosure, I suppose, on like what this whole side of this aspect is. You know, what is it? I want to
Yeah.
know.
Exactly.
So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's confusing and it's frustrating. Just tell us the truth,
Yeah. I
really.
mean, I think if it was that bad of a thing, yeah, if it was that bad of a thing, it would have been much worse by now as an overall. You know what I mean? Like, if it was something really bad and it was something that's, dangerous to mankind or something, like surely they would have gotten on with it by now. I just think if it's something positive, it could just be on hold because we're not ready yet and we're just not as developed yet as they'd like us to be, or I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like we might not be spiritually connected or strong enough yet. Because I think what was I listening to there somewhere? I think it was another podcast or another channel or something like that, saying that they had pity on humans because we haven't connected to that sort of things yet, where we have the abilities to be able to sort of heal ourselves in the vibrations and whatnot, and you know we have the abilities that they have, but we haven't unlocked it yet because we're too. I suppose we're too not spiritually connected. You know, I'm trying to think of how you word that now. We're
Yeah.
not attuned to what our abilities actually are. We're too dedicated to technology and science and stuff like that. And like I suppose back in the old days, we were
Hmm.
very focused on straight and narrow. You know, religion was your path of, you know, that's how you followed that down there, and you stray apart, and then God's going to punish you or something like. You know, we were very attuned to a controlling system such as religions, and it wasn't. It's not till like to these days today that we're sort of breaking away from the control from religions. You know, governments were controlling us majorly back in like the last 40, 50 odd years. And we're sort of starting to break away from the governments now. You know, things that people are starting to question things more. And it's like this new sort of generation that's coming through. They're open to everything. Like they sort of, they hate the old ways, but like are creating a new way. Whereas like, I suppose us, our generation, we're sort of like, we still appreciate the traditions, but we're still open to the new world sort of thing, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but yeah.
No,
Like,
no one rambles more than I do.
But it seems like our future is becoming a lot more open. You know, it's getting to the point there where things just can't be hidden anymore. And obviously, our generation is I hope our generation will sort of grasp the truth of what's been happening in behind governments and such, and sort of
Yeah.
release it, because we're trying to pursue it. And obviously, the generation after us, you know, what are they, Z, Y, or something? I don't know. What's the new generation they call these days? Anyway, our children, basically, hopefully our children will be the generation that will bring forth the whole truth and pursue everything that, and continue that on to go and say, look, these were our abilities. We all combine and work as one. You know, peace is where love and peace is where it's all at, and the, you know, sort of creates a world, not a world order, but, you know, creates a world of world paradise where it's the what's that word now? Where like it's a peaceful world. You know, everything's all in harmony or whatever. I can't even think of it.
My mum used to always just say, you know, if I could just put one wish out there, you know, before my time is up in this world, I would love for us all to gather in the streets united and look up, and they're all coming down, and that's it. You know, it's time to just get on with it. And she just used to laugh and say that, you know, if we could all just go outside together and we could all just look up, and, you know, there's no denying it anymore, and the world's ready. And she said, I wish I could see that in my time. So
yeah, that's it.
You know, good luck with that, Mum.
That's it.
But
yeah. And thank you to Caleb. That's the one I was, Utopia. That's what I'm after, Utopia.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, I don't think we've got any questions coming through. So, look, I think we'll finish it here. So, look, thank you very much for coming on the show. And Justine, it was great having you both on here talking and just having a great chat about your experiences there. It's absolutely fantastic having you back on here again. It's absolutely wonderful. I can't really express my thanks enough for coming back on again, because it's just absolutely wonderful.
Oh yeah, well, same. Likewise, it's super. It's really, really fun and exciting to just share with, you know, like-minded people, anyone who's interested in this. Like I said, I love telling it. I love someone wanting to hear it and, you know, excited and asking questions. It really is my favorite part of existence, I guess. And yeah, it's just something I like to keep alive. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, no worries at all. That it's just what I'm here for. You know, I'm hoping to try and bring out the truth and the realization that these things do exist. You know, as I was mentioned before, like things are happening around the world, and yeah, hopefully it just gets rid of that stigma as well. It's attached to the whole thing as well. You know, it's the truth's got to come out at some point there, and people got to understand that's what's actually there. You know? As much as we like to sort of, like, you know,
Yeah, hopefully
keep our feet grounded, you know, like to what's in reality in our own eyes, but there's something happening in the shadows. So, but yeah, look, again, thank you very much for coming on, and yeah, I'll keep in touch. And obviously, if you and your sister keep experiencing weird things, I'm gonna be hitting you straight back up to come back on here and tell you about your stories. So, I hope you're expecting
for sure.
Ready for it.
All right, cheers.
All right, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah. And that will do it, folks, for this episode of Encounters Down Under. I hope you enjoyed the show, and remember, you can also get involved in the show by joining the Facebook page and getting in on the live streams. Also, please be sure to share with your friends and family to help us grow and potentially find our next guest on the show. If you or you know someone who has had an encounter, please get in touch with me through our Facebook page via Messenger or email at australianufosighting@outlook.com.au. I look forward to seeing you on the next Encounter Down Under. Hooroo!